call to order the DuPage County Legislative and Governmental Affairs Committee. Actually, not because after June 1, it's because of the Rules Committee. It's just going to be called the Legislative Committee.
Oh, thank you.
So, before we take a roll call, there has been a request to allow remote participation from Member Day under Section 7A of the Open Meetings Act. So pursuant to 7A of the Open Meetings Act, if a quorum of the members of the public body is physically present as required by Section 2.01, a majority of the public body may allow a member of that body to attend the meeting by other means if the member is prevented from physically attending because of employment purposes in this case. So is there a motion to allow Member Day to participate pursuant to 7A of the Open Meetings Act? We have a motion by Member Chaplin and a second by somebody over here. Oh, Member Selman. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Roll call, please.
Okay. Member Chaplin? Here. Member DuPage? Here. Member LaPlante?
Here.
Member Ranahan?
Here.
Member Selman? Here. And Member Day?
Here.
All right. I'd like to make a motion to approve minutes from Tuesday, December 14th, 2021.
So moved.
Well, I moved it, so you're.
Oh, second, sorry, second, yeah.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
All right.
Okay. Any public comments?
No. Michelle.
Okay. I have no chairman's remarks. Everything I said during the county board meeting today. Anything I wanted to say, I already said. So we will move on to the 2022 Springfield Legislative Agenda Session Preview, which you all got in your board packets. And we have, well, we hope to have Chip Hume and Dave Sullivan on.
Oh, yeah, they're both on.
Oh, they're both on. Hello, guys. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So,
Hi, good afternoon.
From my understanding, the governor's budget comes out on February 2nd, and we'll know more then. And it is an abbreviated session. It will end April 8th. So we have just general ideas in our packet, which align with everything that our legislative agenda has been in the years past. But we'll have more specific bills to highlight for you in 2 weeks. Because we got some bills from who?
So Dave Sullivan and Chip Humes are on, just kind of give a general overview, and then Friday's the deadline for House bills to be introduced. So they introduced 400 bills this morning. So I'm going through all the bills. So in 2 weeks, I'll come back and have a specific bill list for the committee to vote on, and then hopefully also the federal agenda.
As related to our priorities, which are outlined in this presentation. Okay, take it away, guys.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Senator, I'll start. If you have anything, please feel free to chime in. Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for the opportunity to be with you today. Just a brief update. Cheryl keeps you obviously very well up to speed, but the House is in COVID protocol this week, so they are virtual, meaning they're doing virtual committee hearings. The Senate was already scheduled to be off this week. So not a lot of action from a committee perspective on the House side taking place. It's kind of a slow build up to the crescendo that we expect to be the month of March and the first few days of April. Madam Chair said, well, the governor's budget address and the State of the State address are combined. They will be on February 2nd. That's usually when Governor Pritzker will outline kind of the state of the state, I'm sure with a very heavy COVID recovery focus, and also his budget priorities for this next year. Abbreviated session, obviously all the dates are kind of thrown up in the air. So Dave and I are kind of running around like chickens with our heads cut off because we're outside of our normal comfort zone in terms of understanding, where we are in the regular terms of session. And I know everyone on this meeting feels the same way with the primary date moved up. It seems like no one knows where we are in the regular term, but we expect to be back in person the first week of February, expecting some protocols to come out in terms of what the testing is going to look like for the Senate. They've had kind of a robust shield testing program. Not sure how they're going to amend that in terms of access to the building, but we shall see that shortly. So just got the note that they're planning to be in that whole week of next week, and then barring any major COVID issues, I would expect them to be in throughout the bulk of the session. So the remainder of the greater part of February and March, and then first few days of April. So like Cheryl said, a lot of bills being introduced that we're watching. We're just kind of trying to digest everything and then figure out, where everything kind of ranks on our priority list. So that's my quick update. Dave, if you have anything, otherwise happy to take any questions from anyone on the committee.
Sure. Thanks, Chip. Hello, everybody. I'd just like to add that my partner, Mark Polis, is also on the Zoom. So if you have any questions, Mark can also help out. Obviously, we're watching things like LGDF and Puppy Mill and the public safety conversation in general. It's, as Chip said, it's going to be an interesting truncated session. I remember the last time we adjourned this early was April 15th. That year, I actually had a primary in that March, so it was a heck of a first part of the year. As you know, this year they've delayed the primary to the end of June. And as I think this group can relate to, the legislators are also kind of preoccupied with their own petitions. So we're trying to get that done also. But Mark, Chip, and I are available for any questions.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Chip. So you've had this for a couple of days to look at. Does anybody have questions for our lobbyists about our legislative agenda?
Want me to go over it all?
Sure, yeah. I mean, one of the things, guys, that I wanted to point out is the legislative committee really embraced the humane pet ordinance that became law. And I understand that there's a bill now to repeal that. So obviously DuPage County is going to be very forceful, adamant in our approach to not letting that repeal pass. That's just an issue that's close to my heart. So I hope that we work, really hard to stop the repeal. But go ahead, Cheryl. What else would you like to say about it?
Do you guys have any, I know Representative Davis seems pretty intent on trying to repeal it. And there was that amendment to Senate Bill, I think 1751, and then a new bill. Do you have any insight on likelihood of passage or where we're at with that?
I'll take that one. Yeah, I had a very significant or a prolonged conversation this morning with Mark Ayers, kind of going over some strategy. He's working on kind of a soft roll call in the House. Will Davis is working very, very hard to get that bill moving. Consumer protection, where it has been traditionally assigned, the issue has been traditionally assigned, has been a favorable committee for us. And I know Representative Davis is working very, very hard to try to get that bill moved over to agriculture. And I think he has the vice chair and the Republican spokesperson on his piece of legislation from that committee. So that's obviously something we don't want to happen, but we're mounting kind of a full court press to it. Time is not on the side of the Puppy Mill folks because of the truncated session. So from our side, we're going to do everything we can to attempt to prevent that bill from moving, and we'll just kind of keep the fight up as we move through it. But they're very, very dedicated, the Puppy Mill folks. They've hired some pretty legitimate lobby firms, so they're giving it a very, very solid effort, and we're just doing everything that we can to combat it.
And their lobby firms, Chip, from my understanding, are like personal, intimate friends with some of the legislators, right? So that's what's kind of moving on this.
Yeah, I think that's why they chose Representative Davis to carry this piece of legislation. I'm not sure that this is a real personal issue for him, but I believe that's why he's carrying it.
Exactly. All right. Thank you. Any other legislation you'd like to?
I'll just go over the overview page really quickly to make sure everyone's comfortable. Like Chair Dessart said, I didn't get really any bill ideas from staff, or I had a few things from board members, but the first one, I'm on the overview page, building the local public health infrastructure. That was a concern last year. I think Dennis Brennan's on from the health department if you have any questions, but clearly the local public health department infrastructure was not in place to address COVID. And we know there's going to be future public health crises coming down the line, and the state typically invest 18 million a year in 97 county health departments. We know that's insufficient, and they really need to build that public health infrastructure. And IDPH has had a little bit of a combative relationship with the county health departments, which we don't like to see. They need to be partners, and they haven't really been releasing the money appropriately. We are $1 million short per capita in terms of the formula. So Karen Ayala, her staff are working very hard to try and help build that public health infrastructure. And we're hoping during the budget process, we'll be seeing more money for county health departments, not just COVID, but all the other issues that they have to address. The second item, the fair share of LGDF, that's just been a constant battle, but this is the #1 priority of the DuPage Mayors and Managers Conference. They really want to see that 6% roughly that we're getting now go eventually to 10. We know it's probably never going to get back to 10, but that's certainly a long range goal. As you know, DuPage County taxpayers send a lot of money to Springfield, and one way we get it back is the fair share of income tax proceeds. And you need that money to support all of the critical services that the county board supports. So that's always going to be probably a long-term, but we have a lot of partners in that particular one. Environmental issues, that's long been a concern of the county board. I think environmental committee is meeting next week to endorse a couple of specific bills on carpet recycling, stewardship, and drug take-back programs. This committee endorsed the Clean Energy Act last year, but clearly environmental issues, and there's a lot of bills that were just introduced on the topic that I'll probably bring before you, is an ongoing concern for the board. Member Chavez brought forth expand affordable housing. In particular, as you know, last year the Hope Fair Housing Center had brought that one piece of legislation to our attention that didn't pass. It passed, I think, the House, but not the Senate. So to prevent discrimination against individuals who use housing vouchers or rental emergency assistance, that's become a big issue. Sometimes landlords don't count that as income and they're not renting to them. So we want to support that legislation again this session. And also, I think, you know, COVID highlighted the need for more affordable housing. We all know that. So looking for initiatives that might be introduced in Springfield, that's certainly a long-term goal, but we wanted to add that. We spoke to the puppy mill ban, but also, just so you know, State Attorney Berlin introduced a bill this week that increases penalties for animal cruelty, and that was in response to the West Chicago kennel fire. And I do have bill number back in my office. I'll grab that, but I'll put it on the list. But Representative Conroy is going to carry that bill. And that's been a goal of his office for some time, to try and have some meaningful penalties for people who abuse and mistreat animals. And then our capital projects, Jason's just finishing up this year's capital list. I think we're going to have 35 roughly.
Approximately, that sounds about right.
We did knock off a lot of capital with CARES Act and ARPA, but we always have a list ready, stormwater, public works, the animal shelter. Just in the event there's money available, we have a list ready to go that's online, that's searchable by congressional district, state rep district, and House district. So if a member calls you and says, hey, do you have any transportation projects in District 1? They can go on there and pull those up, because you never know when there's going to be an opportunity. And for grants too, it's a good list for us to update and keep. And I know Mark Poulos is working on trying to get some projects, some public works projects released that we got 2 years ago. And also the health department ship's working on trying to release that $5 million that Representative Conroy got for the recovery center, substance abuse center that they wanted to build at the old youth home. So those are some ongoing issues we're working on with regard to capital.
That raised one question. Along with the puppy mill ban that came to law last session, there was also a predatory lending bill that was passed into law and signed into law. And I'm understanding that some of the pet stores in DuPage County are getting around that with some sort of loophole, and they're still doing the predatory lending, but there's some loophole there. Do you think Springfield will be tightening up the legal wording of the predatory lending?
I haven't heard that, but has Mark Garris raised that as an issue, or?
No, Mark did not.
Okay.
I've been hearing from people who they're still lending it, 80, 90, 100% interest. Can you believe that?
No.
Okay, other questions?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. So,
Chapman.
yes. I noticed in our environmental protection, health of the residents, we usually always have something in there about protecting our air and our water. So I don't know, could we put that language in our agenda somewhere? Because I think it's important we have a legislation that, supports clean air and clean water, especially with the history here.
Sure, I was gonna put that in the federal.
Okay.
Because it's more of a federal issue, but I can certainly put it in here too.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that's the one it was that always, okay,
Right.
and,
But I can certainly add that.
yeah, and then, do we want to talk about, repealing the, legislation that was passed, with the election precinct size?
Well, it's in
because everybody was-
effect, but I guess I
Everybody was
defer to
against it. I mean, we heard how all the board members were against it, so I didn't know if they want, it was in our legislative, we approved it in our legislative agenda the last 2 years. Then we heard the uproar. So if you want to put it in, you don't want to change the legislation, you're all happy with the 1,200 precincts then?
Member Selman?
Thank you. So when we discussed the omnibus bill on the 26th, no one disagreed with the intent of the bill. Where the disagreement has come is the implementation and the process that was used. I don't think anyone disagrees with our clerk that there'll be some savings if we have bigger precincts. It's how we get there always matters, and that was what the bipartisan disagreement was. So I didn't hear any opposition to the bill itself. That would be
Well, I've heard a lot of
maybe
it.
members they could elaborate, but I think the problem that was bipartisanly brought up on the board was the process with which we received the data. So I don't think there's any appetite for that.
Member Zay, did you have your hand up?
Well, I did. I mean, our question was, we didn't get enough information. Yeah, I am concerned if we're going to have less polling places on election day, if that's the intent of this legislation. We've heard about not disfranchising people. I mean, if we're going to go and they follow that model of 3 precincts or 3 polling places per precinct, we're going to lose over 100 polling places on election day. I mean, but we didn't get any information on that. I don't know what the clerk's plans were, how they were going to do that, how they're going to implement it. So it's really hard for me to repeal something when we, didn't get any information on that.
It was just my understanding that with early voting now and mail-in voting, and sure, I think you might be able to back this up, we don't nearly have the number of people on election days. We have all these polling places with hardly anybody showing up on election day. So that was the point of the legislation. Clerks throughout the county are seeing this issue with early voting and mail-in. Voting day is not nearly as crowded as it was. So that's part of why this legislation was put into place. So
For your party, my party still votes on election day.
well, why do your parties send in mailings too and early votes? I don't think you're a party.
Right, but if you look traditionally, I mean, you can look at the last election and ask the clerk, the vote by mail is predominantly Democrat, and then the early voting and election day are majority is Republican. So that's what concerns me.
Right. Well, this was clerks all throughout the county, and I believe that
Country.
throughout this state. And I think that in the state, there are a lot more Republican county clerks than Democratic county clerks. And I think they all came to agreement on this. So those representing those Republican counties, like in central and southern Illinois.
Where they have 1/15 of our population, or
Oh, I don't know, but I'm just saying, it was
I'm just concerned about DuPage. That's what I'm concerned about. So, I mean, if the clerk's intention was to, I mean, we don't know. Again, we don't know what the process, because we didn't get a whole picture on it.
Any other discussion on the legislation?
Yeah, kind of just to sidestep this a little bit. I mean, I think we should ask Springfield for some clarification on this item because, it said we failed to, change the precincts to do what we were supposed to do for consolidation purposes. We did not do that. And according to the law, on the face of the law, we're supposed to be doing this in July. And I heard a lot of people say November. November is nowhere in the statute. It is July. And so we need some clarification in terms of just guidance as to what our role is here. Like, how do we do this? Because I'm quite disappointed on how it all went down. That being said, we gotta deal with the next step. So if they need to clean up the law, basically.
And I have spoken to the clerk, and she said that we're based on the the primary election in June, on June 28th, she's not gonna have time in July she's gonna be cleaning up that after that election and looking forward to the November election. So July is a busy month for that office.
Well, I
Member
mean,
Simon.
I don't care that much what she says. I care more what we're supposed to do and what
Oh, and
Springfield is
what the
telling
law
us to
says.
do.
Right. And are there ramifications? There were no teeth in the law.
I wonder if it might be possible when there's legislation that affects other offices like this one, or you mentioned the one that State's Attorney Berlin is doing, if they can come present why their office wants these bills. I think that was really a part of the issue, is that we heard why Springfield wanted it. We heard a little bit why maybe the clerk's office wanted it, and we heard opposition on the floor, but without sort of a presentation of the office that's responsible, I feel like we're being asked to make decisions for someone else. And I wouldn't
I
want
don't
to-
remember mentioning Berlin.
you just said that Berlin had a bill.
Oh, I just
that
about the
they're-
animal cruelty.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I'm like,
Yeah, I'm just saying, before it gets included in anything, if there's another elected, I would want to hear from them.
Yeah. Hear us out.
Okay,
Thank you.
so when something gets included, when somebody has an idea that gets included in their agenda, we need to have them come and speak before the committee to tell us why what about member initiatives? I know Greg Shorzy
I'm sure. the
brought up
member
some.
wants to. I don't want to speak for Bob Berlin and say it's a good idea or a bad idea if he doesn't come tell me. Same with the clerk. If she has a problem with the bill, I want her to tell us that. I don't want to assume that's how she should do her job, because I'm fairly sure she doesn't want to be told how to do her job, just like we don't. So I just want to make sure we're collaborating with those electeds in the other offices that we don't have control over.
Yeah, I think I put in I don't normally put specific bills in here. I reference like the carpet stewardship because of it approved it before, but because they've had such a strong record on animals, and we've talked about in animal services, the kennel fire, I included that one, but if you'd like Mr. Berlin to come in 2 weeks or someone from his office, I can certainly ask them.
Wait, before I say I want to support or not support of something, I want.
That'll be on a bill
Understand.
list.
Yeah.
This isn't really supporting any bills. This is just goals. That's why I bring the bill list.
But this, I mean, it does though, right?
It's a
We send
concept,
this
yeah.
to our reps, they're gonna look at this and go, you want me to vote against that pet bill, even if the number's not in here. So I want to make sure we're communicating both our board's needs as well as the other countywide electeds as clearly as possible.
But what about member initiatives?
It'd be up to them if they want. I mean, I think Member DeCiani's done that with member initiatives. He does the rounds and explains, why something's important and why he wants it to be included.
But some of
So
the things are just kind of obvious, like Member Chavez brought up affordable housing. That's kind of always been a county initiative. So I'm just wondering if you're asking for a report from Member Chavez and why we should support
she's
affordable
not a
housing.
countywide elected official. Okay, yeah, I'm saying Bob
So only
Berlin,
countywide elected
executives,
officials.
yeah, executives who have their own office and their own staff, if they want us to support their work, I want to hear why, so we aren't getting lost in a game of telephone.
Or 2 weeks. I'm
Or
sorry.
do you, I guess,
If it's gonna be on something, I want to hear from Bob. If it's
Right.
never gonna be on a list, he can do his job as he likes.
Um,
That's all I'm saying. I don't want to vote on something without hearing from the elected official.
I can do whatever you want. If typically this goes to the county board, so if you don't pass this today, we're looking at probably end of February, and by then session's half over. I can either not pass this, or we can pass this and I
Well,
can
this is
strike
essentially what
that.
we sent
I
last
can
year.
strike that. I can
Yeah.
strike the animal cruelty thing out of here if you want.
No,
Is that okay? Okay.
that is, well, this doesn't talk about the criminal penalties, does it?
It references it, it does. If you go on page, because I just assumed based on previous history, that'd be something they would support, so that's my fault, that was an assumption.
Last paragraph.
Right.
No,
Yeah, I talked about the
it's not
kennel
your
fire.
fault, Cheryl, you're getting
the times change, it's not your fault.
new direction from one board member, just one. We'll still take a vote, and if this passes, then we'll still be on track to get it to our legislators in time for the shortened session. If it doesn't pass, then we won't have any initiatives to give to our lobbyists for the session. Again, in time for the session. Members, Kevin.
Thank you. So, I think Cheryl does a great job at explaining the legislative agenda to us. She tells us all what the initiatives are, where they're, the background of them, how they're coming to the board. So I'm okay if, elected officials want us to, I think the board was very supportive of increasing the precinct size, because we saw it as a cost benefit to us as well. So I think that's why we included it in our legislative agenda. I could be wrong, but I think that was a lot of why we did that, not only because the clerk wanted it, because we saw the value in reducing, in saving money there. Like I said, with less voter turnout, it seemed like the logical step. But I think Cheryl does an excellent job at explaining all the bills that come before us. We get a lot of bills. I think she does a good job, but if people want to have elected officials come out, a lot of times the elected official doesn't see the bill until we see it. Like the clerks did not see that bill until we saw the bill. They were not there writing it. And I know Bob Berlin's probably not going to see this bill until the bill is done. So however you guys want to do it, but I think Cheryl does an excellent job at explaining. When I vote on this agenda, I have a clear understanding of what is included in this agenda and, but I could go either way, so.
Member Selman?
So do we have an explanation of what enhanced penalties for violations are?
Yeah, I have the actual bill on my desk. I can send you. I can go get copies of it, but yeah. Do you know, Nick, by chance? I know Connor worked on drafting it with Scott. Chip, do you know, Scott Marquardt drafted it.
Yeah.
But I guess.
Yeah, I apologize. I don't have the specific enhancants in front of me. They're not listed in the synopsis. I apologize, but they're in the bill, so I don't have the answer. Sorry.
I have to go get the numbers on my desk.
This is the lending bill, or?
No, the advance, it was in response to West Chicago kennel fire.
Okay.
Yeah. I have it on my desk. I just have to bring
Yeah, we'll go through.
right. I can bring it back in 2 weeks for the bill list, and that the bill list will have that number. And then you could take people, off or on the list, and I can take it off here, or whatever you want to do is fine. But for specific bill numbers, I'll bring those back in 2 weeks. We keep it to 20, 25 bills. We don't normally really support or oppose. So if you really love and really hate, everything in between, we just kind of monitor, because it gets too much to give a legislator. They used to say no more than 20 bills. 20 to 25 is kind of our sweet spot. We don't go more than that just because it gets too overwhelming. You got to have priorities, and they can't lobby 20 or 25 bills even. It's kind of tough, but we kind of group them: environmental, animal, housing. But I'll bring that back in 2 weeks, because we haven't seen all the bills yet. We'll know probably, is the Senate introduction next week, or I think it's next week, but Friday's a House introduction.
It was last week. It was last Friday.
So we'll have all the bills by Friday, and then I go through all the bills and look at them, and then come up with a recommended list, and then you can vote on each item. Yes, no, and a position in 2 weeks.
All right, more comments and questions for our lobbyists? All right, thank you guys so much for spending part of your day with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Stay warm.
So with that, I will make a motion to approve the legislative program LEGR 0058-22 resolutions adopting the county's 2022 state legislative program. I made the motion. Member Shepherd seconded it. All those in favor? Aye. Aye.
Can you mark me an abstention, please?
Any opposed? Let's take a roll call.
Okay. We just do a little more discussion. Do a little discussion.
More discussion. Sure.
The motion second.
Discussion.
I don't want to let this go without saying, in terms of build local public health infrastructure, Cheryl, would it be okay as like a subsection? I mean, I know one impact of the pandemic has been mental health and substance abuse issues, and I think I would like to see that be included when we talk about health.
Right, expansion of services for mental health.
Mental health and substance abuse treatment, or something on that order.
Yeah. So, sure. You have any specific language, or you just want me to come up with a couple of?
If we could just add that, just be explicit in terms of when we talk about health.
Sure.
And mental health. Any other discussions? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Member Chaplin,
Aye.
Member Desart,
Aye.
Member Leclerc,
Aye.
Member Anderson,
Oh, hi.
Member Thomas,
Abstain, please, thank you.
Member Zay,
Who's that?
Aye.
Okay, the ayes have it, it passes with one abstention. Do we have old business we'd like to discuss? Any old business? Any new business? All right, I move that we adjourn. Second? Second, someone second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you.